So notice if I select this wall in the floor plan view, it'll highlight there. If I pick this wall here, it's not just going to be selected in this view, it's also going to be selected in all the views. That's another proof that these are all views working together, looking at the same model. It's not that they're all independent. They do have independent settings, like we were looking at here. That one's being displayed differently than this one and this one. But that wall, we can edit it in any of these views currently, and it will still take effect. So right now, the unconnected height is 20 feet. So if I wanted to move that height, I could click there and just drag that triangle down. Notice here it's changed. Here you don't really notice it because it's a plan. But you can tell it's changed, so it's some weird dimension. So if I wanted it to be clean, I could type in 15 and that would jump there. I could go here, and where you see that dimension in this view, we could make that 14.6. That's going to change in all of these views. If I wanted to move it here, that was 15, I could type 16. So anywhere in Revit you see a dimension, it's not just a dimension. It is a dimension, but you can click on it and move things using that, or align things using that, or change the properties. So it's really important to remember that those are always like live, and if you change that number, it's going to affect something. Another thing we could do is, let's say instead of just letting them be 20 feet tall, I wanted them to be 14 feet. So let's grab all of these walls and then go here and say unconnected height 14, and if we move there, you can see they are the same height as this level. But for, let's say something happens in the project and we need to change our levels to be 14.6. So if this goes up to 14.6, now you'd be stuck kind of going back and adjusting all these walls that need to go there. Another option would be you can pick the walls, and we can say, instead of making an unconnected height, so where they have unconnected top constraint, you can change that to be to one of the other levels. So right now we could tell it to go to level 1, and then you'll see there that they've jumped up to there. So if we move this, let's say now this becomes 15 feet, notice all the walls went up with it, because now they are referencing here. And let's say I wanted that, but I wanted this wall to be lower for some reason. I can add an offset. So notice there's a base constraint, base offset, top constraint, and then top offset. And if you go under here and check what this is set to, 0, 0 will make it just exactly that. If I wanted it to go 2 feet past, I could put 2, and you'll see it jump up here. If I wanted to go 2 feet below, I can put a -2, and then it will drop that wall down. So as you move this, it doesn't matter what this becomes. We can change it here this time to show you that it doesn't really matter where you change it. That relationship will always remain the same. It'll always be 2 feet below. So right now this one would be 18 because of that height difference. So that's pretty much that guy. So as you're kind of working, you'll see these things all start to relate together. So walls, if I wanted to change the type of wall, you'll remember we said the top little like bar that drops down, that changes the type of wall, whereas these affect individual parameters of the one instance of that wall, or however many you have selected. So if I were to make a change to the type of wall, so let's say so here you see it says edit type. That's an easy way to remember. If I change any of these settings, it will, once I hit save, it's gonna affect every single wall that is part of this generic 8-inch wall. If I don't want that to happen and I just want to affect one specific wall, that's another clue that you need to be doing that here. Or you need to create a new type of wall and then apply it here. So how do we change the wall type? If you click here, you'll see the different walls, and if I wanted this to be a 4-inch brick wall, you can click that and notice that the individual parameters of this wall didn't change, but the actual wall type did. Oops, I'm double clicked on there. So that wall is still 2 feet below level 1, but now it's a brick wall instead of this. And if I select that wall and I right click and say select all instances visible in view, see, it's only going to grab those because now that wall no longer belongs to that same family type. That's a different type of wall, so Revit sees it differently. It's really important to understand that because even though we changed the settings earlier, now that's a different type, so it belongs to a different family. So changes I make to that family type will only affect this type of wall. Any change you apply using any of these settings down here will affect the individual wall. And it doesn't mean these can't be the same. So I could apply that same 2 foot, so let me hit control to grab all of these. So top offset -2, they can share that kind of relationship, but the width, and especially you'll notice that in the floor plan, see they're different, and they're even showing different. This one has a dash. Notice how this has like a really thick line and then a dash inside. If you come up to the top where it says thin lines, so it's like this fat line with a slash and then a thin line, this is really useful, especially when you start detailing and doing stuff, because you'll be able to see the lines really thin in any sort of these line drawings. So if you're trying to see something and it's hard to understand where exactly that joint is, you can click thin lines or type in TL and it will go like that. So now that we've done that, let's go and add a door. So that sounds like a good thing to do. So that will be our first. Before we do that, let me just show you that there is kind of 3 main types of walls within Revit. If you notice the walls, as we scroll down, we could make, let's pick a different wall and change this. So generic 12-inch wall, retaining wall, interior partition 5 inches, CMU on metal stud. So there's all these different types of walls, and as you click them, brick on CMU, you'll see this that they change, and in the plan they change to be an accurate reflection of that. And all those settings which affect that live within that type. So if you go to edit type, you'll see all these settings, and right now a lot of them are grayed out, because in order to change them, you would have to actually change the structure, which is the composite makeup of this wall. So all this information exists within the model. So remember, this is building information modeling. So it's not just a square that's the right dimensions, or just a polyline like it would be in AutoCAD. There's all these information that's tied to that wall. And if you go inside the properties, you'll see these are all the different layers of that wall, and eventually you get to the core, which is the central piece of that wall. So you have the CMU, and then you see here it says exterior side and interior side. Here is the side that's facing the interior, so we have metal furring, which is 1 5/8 inches thick, and then we have the core of that wall, which is a CMU 7 5/8, and then on the exterior side we have a membrane for damp proofing, thermal air layer, so this is just an air barrier. You have rigid insulation and then just air on this one, 3 inches of rigid insulation, 3-inch airspace, and then on the outside you have brick 3 5/8 thickness, and then all of that is set up by the composition of that. And then once you're done, I'm not going to save any of this, because if I was going to make a new wall, I would never have just hit edit. I would go to duplicate and rename it to be whatever it is. So right now it's brick on CMU. Let's say I wanted to do like some sort of metal panel on CMU. I would duplicate this one and then rename that into being, we could go duplicate, and then here you can name this one metal panel on CMU, and then it would show just like this, and then you could go into edit and adjusting all those things. because if you just start changing this, any single wall that's in that model using that family type will change, and that's not what you want to do. You don't want to start just changing stuff because it's all linked together. So the first type, which we were looking at here, you have basic walls, which are these, all sorts of different walls you would typically see in construction. The next type of wall, as far as Revit is concerned, is curtain wall. These are a type of wall which includes storefront, and Revit treats them differently. So we'll get into that on its own. That's its own kind of thing. And then the last type of wall is the stacked wall. So in reality, a stacked wall is two basic walls that are stacked on top of each other. So you could have, let's say, like a CMU foundation or a 8-inch thick concrete foundation up to a certain height, and then above that you might have like metal studs or brick. And Revit would treat that as a different type of wall than a traditional wall. So rather than stacking two walls, you can have a stacked wall as one object. So here you're seeing a bunch of different types. Now you saw how we were able to put a wall and then change the properties. Now let's go into architecture and go to the next one over, doors.